You've found your way once again to Tongue of the Serpent, where the veil is thin, the mirrors remember, and every curiosity comes with a cost. Last time the earth itself woke beneath New Orleans. Tonight something older stirs, not in soil, but in ink. In a city that keeps its secrets bound in dust and silence, a single book has appeared. It breathes, it listens, it waits for a name. If you must read it, read softly. Some words do not want to stay on the page. This is Season 2, Episode 2, The Tome. Lucien Devereux did not remember acquiring the book. That was not unusual. The crew of the Morning Star dealt in curiosities, in things that did not like to be accounted for. Objects had a way of appearing, slipping onto shelves as though they had always been there, waiting for the right hands to reach for them. But this book was different. Lucien found it on the counter, nestled between a stack of ledgers he hadn't opened in years, and an old porcelain doll, missing half its face. The cover was dark, somewhere between black and the deepest brown, as if it had been steeped in ink, or maybe blood, and left to dry. There was no title, no author's name, only a sigil pressed into the leather, a shape that refused to sit still, shifting when he looked away, rearranging itself like something alive. The book smelled of wax and something faintly metallic, the iron tang of dried blood, if he had to guess. He ran a finger along the spine, felt the raised ridges of its binding, the way it pulsed slightly under his touch, as if it had a heartbeat. Books should not have heartbeats. Lucien glanced toward the shop door. The closed sign still hung in the window, swinging lightly in a breeze that did not exist. He should leave it alone. He would leave it alone. Instead, he opened it. The ink slithered. Not literally, not quite, but the words on the page were not still. They shifted between languages, Latin, Aramaic, something older that he did not recognize. Some words were clear, crisp, as if freshly written, while others blurred at the edges, twisting away from comprehension. His pulse quickened. The book wanted to be read. His gaze caught on a line near the center of the page, bold and unwavering amidst the shifting text. To read is to invite. To speak is to unchain. A warning, perhaps, but warnings meant there was something worth discovering, and Lucien had never been one to turn away from a mystery. He traced the words with his finger. The ink was still wet, smearing slightly beneath his touch. The book smelled stronger now. Wax, blood, something burning. His lips moved. He could not stop himself, shaping the words aloud.
And so was bound the devourer between doors.
The air in the shop thickened like a held breath. The light dimmed, not as if a cloud had passed over the sun, but as if the very concept of illumination had grown tired, retreating into itself. The walls loomed closer, stretching impossibly high, the shelves bending at odd angles. Somewhere in the distance, or perhaps just behind his ear, a whisper curled through the air. It was not a voice, not yet, but the suggestion of one, a sound like wind through dead leaves, like paper crumpling in unseen hands. Lucien swallowed hard, throat suddenly dry. The mirror across the room warped, its surface rippling, distorting his reflection, and then, for the briefest moment, his own face stared back at him, eyes hollow, mouth open, too wide. The whisper grew teeth. The bell above the door sang its brittle, off-key song, a jarring note in the heavy silence. Lucien barely heard it. His fingers were still pressed against the pages of the book, the strange sigil on its cover pulsing faintly beneath his touch, as if it were breathing. The air shifted, thickened, and then soft footfalls, the scent of rain-soaked stone, and something herbal, something sharp. Sister Mercy stepped into the room, her black garments rippling like crow feathers in a wind that did not exist. Sister Mercy was a contradiction made flesh. She stood no taller than a child, barely brushing 5 feet, but her presence filled the room like thunder rolling in on a clear day. Her skin was the dusky bronze of honeyed tea, her features sharp and precise, carved from a lineage both Creole and Southeast Asian. Her black habit flowed around her like shadows made silk, but it bore none of the austerity of the church. The fabric shimmered faintly with a violent iridescence, and fine silver embroidery traced the hems in geometric patterns too complex for the eye to follow. Where a crucifix might have hung at her throat, she wore a charm of obsidian and garnet, etched with a rune that shifted like the sigil on the book. Her eyes were the most unsettling part, wide and dark. They seemed to peer through the air itself, as if always looking at something just behind the veil of this world. She moved like a whisper between thoughts, precise, economical, impossible to ignore. She did not speak, not at first. Her presence was enough. The shop itself seemed to hold its breath. Then she stopped, mid-step. Her head tilted like she had walked into an unseen barrier, something woven from the very air. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and when her eyes flicked to Lucien's hands, to the book, she hissed between her teeth.
"Close that, now."
Lucien hesitated. He could feel the weight of the words he had read still hanging in the air, unfinished, waiting. The book was warm now, resisting as he tried to press its covers together, like flesh refusing to knit over an open wound.
"I said..."
Sister Mercy's voice was a thread of steel. She moved, swift and sharp, producing a vial from within her robes. The tiny bottle was unremarkable, but when she uncorked it, the scent of salt and iron filled the space between them. She dipped 2 fingers into the vial, then traced a swift, looping symbol in the air. The salt shimmered, an after-image burning in the dim light of the shop. The book let out a sound, a sigh, a rustling, like dry leaves swept by a wind from nowhere. And then it slammed shut with a force that made Lucien flinch. Silence pulled around them once more, thick and uneasy. Sister Mercy exhaled through her nose.
"I said..."
Lucien ran his tongue over his teeth, steadying himself.
It's a book.
Sister Mercy shook her head.
"No, it only looks like one."
She glanced at the sigil on the cover, now dull, lifeless.
"Tomes like this aren't books. They're invitations."
Lucien exhaled, rubbing his temple with the heel of his hand.
Invitations to what?
Sister Mercy's gaze flicked to the corners of the room, the shadows pulling there a little too deep, a little too patient. Then softly she said,
"Something is listening."
Evelyn felt it before she saw it, a ripple in the air, like a thread pulled too tight. She stepped into the shop and halted just inside the doorway. The smell of hot metal and something older, something rotten at the edges of time, hung thick in the air. Lucien stood behind the counter, his fingers still resting on a book that should not exist. His face was pale, his eyes darker than she remembered. Sister Mercy was beside him, stiff as iron, her hand curled protectively around the vial of salt she always carried. "What did you do?" Evelyn asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucien parted his lips as if to answer, but the words never came. The lights flickered, once, twice. The bulbs strained against the weight of something pressing in from the other side. Glass rattled in the display cases. A deep breath, too big for the room, stirred the dust. Then the mirror in the corner cracked. Not from a single fracture, but from within, as if something inside was stretching against the surface. The silvered glass darkened, deepened, became a pool of ink. The crack widened, unfurling like an open mouth, and the shadow stepped through. It was wrong, and every way a thing could be wrong. Its shape shifted, bournes forming and unforming beneath a slick, too thin skin. It moved in spasms, like something trying to remember how to be human and failing. Its eyes, or what passed for them, were pits, pulling the light into them. The air warped, the shop bent inward. The voice came next, a whisper in a dozen tongues, layered and overlapping, none of them meant for human ears. It spoke Lucien's name, not the way a friend would, nor a lover. It spoke his name as if it owned it. Lucien staggered back. His hands were empty now, but the book was trembling where he had left it, its pages fluttering, though there was no wind. The whispers grew louder. They slithered through the space between words, curling in the corners of the room. Sister Mercy moved fast, her fingers dipping into her pocket, coming away coated in salt. She flung it in a quick arc, her voice sharp and firm, as she muttered something in a language older than the city itself. The salt hit the thing, and it recoiled, its form twisting as if in pain, but it did not vanish. It did not leave.
"It's here now,"
Sister Mercy murmured, her breath steady, though her hands were tight fists at her sides.
"And it's hungry."
The book jerked, as if something inside it was trying to escape. The whispers sharpened, peeling away from one another, repeating the same syllables over and over again. Lucien's name. He turned to the book as if compelled, his hand reaching before he realized what he was doing. Evelyn slapped his hand away. "Don't," she hissed. Lucien looked at her, confusion flickering behind his eyes. He wasn't sure now if he had meant to open it. The book continued to tremble, the voice calling, pleading, demanding. Something had heard him. Something had answer. The pages of the tome ripped themselves free, caught in a violent invisible wind. They spiral through the air, flickering like moths too close to the flame before they ignite, curling to blackened cinders before they ever touch the floor. The scent of burning parchment mingles with something older, something wrong, the acrid bite of scorched bone, the sickly sweet rot of forgotten places. Lucien stares at the mirror, where his own reflection has betrayed him. The thing staring back has his face, but not his eyes. His eyes are black endless pits bored straight through the world. His mouth stretches too wide, an unnatural collection of teeth and shadow. It grins at him. It raises a hand in greeting, fingers taping into needle-thin points. Lucien does not wave back. The air buckles. Something seeps through the cracks in reality, pooling like ink spilled into water, dragging with it something worse, a shape without shape, a nightmare half-remembered. It is built of wrongness, of limbs that bend where they should not, of too many fingers and too many eyes, blinking wetly in places no eyes should be. It moves as though uncertain how bodies are meant to work, twitching between dimensions, flickering in and out of being. The shop protests. The walls breathe, stretching outward like the ribs of some great, slumbering beast, roused too soon from sleep. The bookshelves are no longer bookshelves. They shift, growing knotted, pulsing veins of dark wood, their spines splitting open like mouths whispering nonsense, syllables half-formed and hungry. The air itself feels thick, as though it has learned the weight of words, as though it has become sentient and resentful of those who would trespass through it. The creature moves. Sister Mercy does not hesitate. Her voice rises in a chant, low and steady, a language that predates language. Her hands glow with something not quite light, something deeper, carved from faith and fury. The salt markings on the floor blaze to life, their lines burning silver, a boundary drawn between what is real and what should never have been allowed to touch it. The creature recoils, its limbs spasming in frustration, its mouths, so many mouths, opening in a soundless scream. Lucien knows what he has to do. His hands find the book, still trembling, where it lies on the counter, its pages now thick as skin, pulsing as though filled with something that breathes. His fingers are already stained with ink, black veins creeping up his wrists, marking him. He does not have time to worry about what that means. He grips the final page, the one that has not yet burned, the one that holds the binding spell, the one that might yet save them. He tears it free. The world winches sideways. The creature's screams, not sound, but silence, show sharp it cuts. It flails, imploding, folding into itself like a paper crumpled by an unseen hand. The mirror cracks down the center. The bookshelves shudder, then still. The walls breathe out one last time, and are only walls again. The air settles, weightless once more. The shop is quiet. The page in Lucien's hand is blank. The book is gone. Reduced to a delicate skeleton of ash, the scent of burnt paper lingers, acrid and final. Lucien watches the last embers curl inward, his hands still trembling. He forces himself to breathe, to unclench his fists.
What the hell was that?
His voice is hoarse, scraped raw. Sister Mercy surveys the ruined floor, her expression unreadable. The candlelight catches in the silver strands of her hair, makes her feel older, heavier with unseen burdens.
An echo eater.
She says at last.
It waits in mirrors, feeding on forgotten names. You almost became one.
Her dark eyes meet his. A silence settles between them, thick and electric. Then Evelyn steps forward, the anger rolling off her in waves. This isn't the first time something's crawled out of your damn shop, Lucien. He flinches, but there's something like defiance in the sharp angle of his jaw.
I didn't mean to.
He stops, exhales.
I didn't know.
Evelyn gestures to the warped mirror, to the handprints that stain the glass from the inside. And yet, here we are. Lucien swallows. The shop hums with an uneasy stillness, as if the walls themselves are holding their breath. The air feels thinner, stretched, like something was taken and not quite given back. Sister Mercy steps closer, her tone gentler now, though no less firm.
Curiosity is dangerous in places like this.
She reaches into the folds of her coat, pulls out a tiny vial of black sand, and presses it into his palm.
But now you know it's watching.
Lucien closes his fingers around it. The glass is warm against his skin, as if it has already absorbed some trace of him.
And if it comes back?
Sister Mercy tilts her head, considering. Then, softly,
Next time you might not be able to shut the door.
Lucien nods, and the silence stretches between them again. No longer electric, but something heavier, something old. Evelyn sighs, rubbing her temples as if this whole night has been one long headache. We need to ward this place better. Lucien almost laughs, but the sound catches in his throat.
You think?
She glares at him, but there's no real heat behind it. I'll get supplies tomorrow. We're sealing that thing properly. Lucien nods again, distracted. His eyes keep drifting back to the mirror. The distortion is still there. Not obvious, not anymore. But if he shifts just slightly, if he tilts his head the right way, he can still see them. The handprints, faint, fading, but waiting. Later, after the shadow had been banished, if such a thing could ever truly be vanished, the shop lay still, its silence thick as smoke. The warped mirror still oozed darkness around its fractured edges, like a wound that hadn't closed properly. Sister Mercy stood before it, her fingers carving faint sigils in the air. Each glowed for a heartbeat, then vanished like breath on cold glass. Behind her, Lucien poured tea he didn't remember making. His hands shook, but he passed her a cup without a word. She accepted it with a nod, though she didn't drink. Evelyn paced by the counter, arms crossed, voice sharp. Are you going to explain what just happened? Or are you one of those cryptic types who only speaks in riddles? Sister Mercy turned slowly.
I speak plainly, Mademoiselle Evelyn.
She said, voice soft but heavy, like something ancient buried under cathedral stones.
But I do not always have the luxury of time.
Lucien sat down hard, rubbing his temples.
You knew the book. You knew exactly what it would do.
I knew what it was.
She said.
It's not a book, it's an echo, a gate, and you nearly flung it wide.
Evelyn narrowed her eyes. And how exactly did you know all this? Sister Mercy's faint smile held no warmth.
Because I was once Sister Mercy of the Order of the Purple Veil. We kept vigil over the forgotten and the forbidden, guarding doors that were never meant to open, but I left that life behind. Now I do my work here, in the city full of ghosts and bargains. New Orleans has cracks in its foundation, and something keeps trying to crawl through.
She stepped away from the mirror, her boots silent on the old wood floor, and joined them at the back table. The candle between them flickered as if straining to stay lit.
These days I go where I'm needed. Quiet places, thin places. I follow the scent of things that remember how to hunt.
She reached into her sleeve and drew a folded piece of parchment, laying it gently on the table. It was etched with spiraling glyphs and symbols like tiny bones. At the center was a sign that echoed the one on the book, though here it was bound in ink and flame.
This is a warding seal. I'll leave it with you. It won't stop what's behind the cover, but it'll slow it down.
Evelyn leaned forward, scowling. Why wouldn't we just destroy the book? Sister Mercy shook her head.
Because it came to you for a reason. But if you open it again, do so with a knife in one hand and a mirror in the other. The devourer takes the shape of what you love most.
Lucien was silent, his eyes unreadable. Evelyn glanced at him, then away.
You called it the devourer between doors.
Mercy said.
You knew the name. You read the name.
Lucien exhaled slowly.
I didn't finish the invocation.
No,
she said.
but the door heard you knock.
She looked at him for a long moment.
Lucien Devereux, of all people you should have known better. Your name is still spoken in certain circles, with reverence or fear, sometimes both. The fact that you opened the book, that's what worries me most.
She rose to her feet, her presence seeming to draw inward, like the tide retreating. At the door, she paused.
I'll be back. The shadow isn't gone. It's just remembering how to wait. And now it knows your voice. That can't be undone.
She turned slightly, her silhouette framed by the flickering gaslight.
Don't trust reflections, and don't ever read aloud again.
Then she stepped into the dark, vanishing into the New Orleans night like a prayer no one dares to say twice. The book is gone. The mirror still watches. In the dim light of the crew of the Morning Star, ash curls where words once lived. And Lucien Devereux has learned, perhaps too late, that every door has two sides. You've been listening to Tongue of the Serpent, stories from the haunted heart of New Orleans, where faith and fear share a single candle, and even silence has its own reflection. If you've enjoyed this descent, leave a light in the window. The next story is already on its way, whispering through the roots. Until then, speak softly. The serpent is always listening.